The kitties, dog is barking, is the sound of life.
Sometimes. Ready?
Ready.
Welcome everyone. We're back again. Episode Good, Bad, Funny Life Light episode because my dear Thea is still not here. In her honor, we're continuing our pod without her, but she's here in spirit. And today, what we've done with these episodes is we've wanted to extend previous conversations, and so we thought we would come back to our conversation around mental health, because previously we talked about our mental health toolkits and how they might differ because of our generations. We're from different generations, and we thought we'd come back to that, especially with the state of the world right now. I mean, even as we're talking today, last night there was another shooting near the White House, and locally, close to us in Garden Grove, California, there is a serious situation. The chemical plant that's about to either spill out or explode, and I think like 50,000 people have been relocated. So we definitely send our thoughts out to people that are impacted by that situation and hope that there's a resolution that lets them get back to their homes soon safely. But we know, aside from that, for the last several months at least, we've seen a lot of changes in the world, war, financial uncertainty, and all of this has impacted everybody, according to a Psychology Today article from September 2025. So before any of this even happened, 1 out of 5 adults in America was diagnosed or had already been diagnosed with some kind of anxiety disorder. 73% of American adults were experiencing elevated levels of anxiety related to the political climate here in the US, with many describing their feelings as anxious, exhausted, and even angry. And then a recent mental health poll indicated that 67% of US adults also report feeling anxious about global events, like I mentioned, war, certainly being at the top of that, including concerns about the economy, safety, and climate change. Additionally, 70% of Americans report experiencing high levels of financial anxiety. We know here in the US, things have gotten more expensive, and it's definitely required people to adjust and to make really tough decisions around how and where to spend their money. Depression's also increasing. According to a Newsweek article from September 2025 as well, the percentage of adults getting treatment for depression in the US had been over 18% for the last 2 years. Some of the factors included some of the reasons I just mentioned that also resulted in anxiety, the financial stress and insecurity, but there were definitely some changes post-COVID as well. I know we're already 6 years post-COVID, but we're still feeling the effects of increased loneliness. For some who did get sick from COVID, the long-term effects of that are still impacting them. And youth have been particularly impacted by all of these changes. And though we've gone through cycles of similar social and world events in the past, it was interesting because we attended a graduation recently, and thinking about youth entering as young adults into the world and thinking about everything that's going on, one of the speakers reflected on their own similar period of time, which was in the 70s, that there were similar world events going on and uncertainties. And so the lesson is that these things do cycle, but some of what's going on now feels a bit unprecedented. And I think that's what's a little more unnerving for people. And I think what exacerbates these stressors is that we have constant exposure to them. You know, though we've had cycles of this, now we have access to constant social media, other media outlets, streaming, everything, where we can see all of these things play out almost every minute of the day, I think, and that certainly takes its toll on folks. So when we talked last time, we talked about some coping tools that we use, including good self-care, which includes sleeping as well as you can, eating well, exercising, mindfulness like deep breathing and meditation, positive social support, and if it's necessary, professional help. I would add to that limiting exposure to negative information, whether that's via social media or through TV, really just making sure that you have time carved out where you're not looking at those things, and in fact, not starting your day looking at those things and not ending the day. They say at least an hour before you go to bed, you should cut those things off. And so that certainly, I think, is a good recommendation. We know that there's elevated cortisol levels in the morning, and that already makes you a little more anxious and possibly depressed. And so you want to take extra measures to make sure that you can contain and decrease the anxiety and depression. So today we're going to talk about how we've been handling things since we last talked about mental health. Yeah, so that's the plan for today.
That's the plan.
All right, here we go. So we'll start, since we last talked about this, and Mom, you can go first. What's something you've reflected on or you've encountered since our last conversation that has required you to put some extra attention on your mental health?
You know, we all have stressing times, up and downs in our life. And you touched something important that it seems like this has happened before. Like in the 70s, someone was mentioning, like you said before, we had problems with gasoline. The economy was also not doing too good. To the point, I believe, if I remember correctly, in the 60s or 70s, people would close to the border to Mexico, would cross to get gasoline on the other side, which, you know, now sounds like what? And there was, you know, still the war of Vietnam and restlessness in the world. It seems to me, though, I was thinking about it and I thought, why do I have this depression sometimes, this anxiety? Because it seems like out of our hands, out of control. And then I think, well, it seems that things like this have happened before. The problem, if it's a problem, because it, you know, it's a situation of advancement in communication, etc., with the social media and so on, that is an instantaneous information, and sometimes it's constant, and especially with young people and, you know, adults too. You spend the whole day checking, and we do realize personally that you need to have some time to relax, you know, to not look at all of that all day long, and have a special, you know, time of meditation or rest, physical exercise, like you were saying. But definitely one can start the day with the idea what is going to happen today, and that's stressful, of course.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like, for sure, even probably having gone through cycles, multiple cycles of this, right? Because at this point you've probably seen several similar episodes in your lifetime. It definitely feels a little different this time.
Yes. It's more, you know, information. And it seems to me, I mean, if I think back even before the 70s or the 60s, for example, you didn't have this kind of continuous information, much less the power really of social media, that you can just click on a certain, you know, place in your social media and look for something. And if you have that available constant in the day, certainly has to be adverse to your mental health.
Yeah. You know, for me, I mean, I'm of an age too where I've seen a few cycles of this too, and I feel that definitely is the difference. It's just it's the good and the bad, right? The constant availability of information, which on one hand is good because maybe you even get updates much faster than you did in the past, but on the other hand, it's just it's like inundation of information. And as we know, it's also, what are the reliable sources, right? Because there might be things that are exaggerated or sensationalized, and that can cause unnecessary anxiety too. And so I think being careful about where you get your information. I'll say for me, for sure, world events, because I'm someone who watches, I think, a healthy amount of news. I really try to not overdo it. Like, I may do it in the morning before work, just in case there's any world events that actually will funnel into the work that I do, right? Because it will impact the people that my agency serves. And then in the evening, maybe a little bit as sort of the update piece. I try to not do it during the day, not go into the news during the day. And I think the other thing to remind folks is limit alerts, because with all these apps, you can also connect them to alerts on your smartwatches or your phones, and you can get pretty exhausted by constant alerts as there's some other breaking news thing that's going on. And again, it's a balance, because on the one hand, sometimes knowing those things, you know, gives you useful information. I think about the wildfires that happened last year, And, Watch Duty became very popular because it was the first exposure I got to that app to know where fires were happening. And in California, there's so many parts that have routinely these wildfires that it was helpful to alert people to evacuations and warnings and things like that. But it's all a balance of that. And for sure, the people that we serve can get a little more easily impacted because they already suffer from anxiety and depression, and these things can easily increase that. For me personally, I think the other thing is being a professional helping folks manage those things while also trying to manage my own feelings can become overwhelming because you have to set aside your personal feelings about things to support the people in front of you. And so sometimes it's not until the end of the day that you get to really reflect on, a lot is going on in the world, and not to get overwhelmed by that. It can be tough. Leaning into things that bring me joy, eating well, maintaining my exercise, sleeping well, trying to keep a sleep routine, I think, is the other thing. When I mentioned earlier that cortisol levels are higher in the morning, those are the things: exercise and keeping, as similar as you can, a sleep schedule can help manage those levels a little bit better. And of course, there's certain foods that can also help manage the levels of cortisol in the morning too. But yeah, that's what I've reflected on with these things. And financial security, economic insecurity, those things have definitely funneled into my day-to-day, and I think it's the same thing of taking it a day at a time and reflecting on what's important when things feel a little stressful, realizing, and I think we said this the last time too, realizing what's important, right? And it
Completely.
sounds,
oh yes,
it sounds, as simple as appreciating that you have your health, right? Because there are folks who, on top of all of this, are facing some serious medical health situations, and it is a blessing to have one's health. And we said, I think, appreciating first thing in the morning that you're even alive, meditating on that, finding joy in something as basic as that, I think has been a change.
Completely. Being grateful, absolutely. And there is a light, or sometimes it's hard for us to realize at a present time you're going through all these difficult times, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, as they say. Because I'm remembering of years past in the difficulty of the 70s, I remember was 63, if I'm not mistaken, 62 or 1963, when the crisis in Cuba, President Kennedy, if I remember, it was really tremendous feeling that at any moment, a nuclear war was going to start, was tremendously real at the time, fear at the time. And yet, we went through that and some other things, and that's what we have to keep in mind. Plus, like you were saying, give yourself some time, be healthy in having enough sleep, practical things like eating well, have a little time during the day to either meditate, read, some silence, to rest our brain from all these negative things that might be going on.
Mm-hmm. And for some, and I think we talked about this last time too, I know not everyone is religious. Faith is very important to us, and I think that also grounds us in what you're saying about the light at the end of the tunnel. One is that having that religious grounding, that spiritual grounding, is that you're not alone, number one, that you don't face these struggles on your own, and that hopefully helps you feel less burdened, but also hopeful. And for those that don't have that, if there's something greater than you that you believe in, that might be the thing that helps you have that same sense of you're not alone, that this does get better, that you will get over this period of time. I think that's a very critical piece.
Completely. And that's one of the problems with young people and adults too. Like we were saying, if you're continually into this social media information, you don't have any respite, if you will, definitely that's going to bring you down with no hope. And that's, what we have to work on that.
Yeah. Hopelessness, lack of hope is one of the key indicators for increased suicide risk. And so I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of what can we do to inspire hope. And like I said earlier, inspire joy even, to counter a lot of what's going on right now. So we've talked about a lot of the tools that we've pulled on during these times. I guess my last question is, was there anything that surprised you in how you've been able to manage certain things, or even the current state of the world, anxieties around that?
Well, it surprised me in how I learned to manage the situation, because before I would, get anxious and nervous so easily. And once I began to try to manage that, like something as simple as walking, enjoying nature in the outdoors, something as simple as that will be a distraction. And be mindful of that, make it like a routine. Break, your time during the day, take a walk in the neighborhood if you have to, if you cannot go any more outdoors. But just looking around you, the trees, the sounds,
breathing fresh air.
Exactly.
If you're able to.
Listening to children play, that may sound like nothing, but it's important because, the birds, the kitties, everybody, the dog is barking. It's the sound of life.
Sometimes. But it's true, because mindfulness is the key, right? When you're outside and you're exposed to all those elements, it's really pulling on you to elicit all of your senses. What you hear, what you smell, what you see, sometimes even what you taste. I know that sounds a little gross. Sometimes in the air you can taste changes in the air. But when it's fresh, that also can inspire one. Like, this is what's around us. And I know it sounds oversimplified maybe, but I think taking a moment to find joy in the things that are around us that can bring us happiness. Children, I run to, and when I run in the morning and I hear school going and I hear kids and they're excited and they're laughing, it triggers memories of simple joys. And I think especially as adults we get extra bogged down by the stressors of the world, that it's sometimes hard to click with that, to remember that. But I guarantee you, and this is an exercise I think I'd like everyone to try, just stop, maybe even after this, stop and think about a happy time as a child. Think about when you didn't have the workload, the stress that you have now, how different the world felt in that moment. Because
Absolutely.
I think that's something that's locked away in all of us, and it's accessible, but you have to really intentionally think about that. And that might even be a tip, when you feel your worst, your lowest, stop and check in with that person that you remember you were, right? That kid with the joy and hope and even excitement about what was to come, right?
Completely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I grew up when I was a child up to my ninth birthday, I think, by the ocean. And sometimes I remember that, even the sound of the ocean, I almost can smell the lovely smell of the ocean. And even a few minutes thinking of that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I will say, in terms of myself, and if anything has surprised me in how I've managed current times and even how it's directly impacted my day-to-day, I think I'm surprised by, I know there was a time I was more easily frazzled by all of it. And I think a big part of it was I was so focused in the hole that I was in that I missed the good stuff. And I think right now, I'm being intentional about it, but I'm really focusing on the good stuff that's happening now. Because if you live too far ahead and you miss those now moments, you're going to get to the other side and then you're going to miss that you didn't enjoy those now moments. And it's not easy, I know that. But it's important to, with intention, stop, pause, and really reflect on that. What is good about the now,
Completely, yeah. So many times, just like you say, you get caught in one time of your life. And what I try to tell myself is, and I know that wise people will tell you, but think that there is not much you can do about yesterday. Learn and then really appreciate, because sometimes we don't appreciate the today completely, which is actually what we have today.
I forget, a cousin of mine used to always have this phrase about the present. Do you remember what it was? And it was something like, because the present is a gift.
Well, yes, I think you will have to translate, but I think in Spanish is something like ayer ya pasó, mañana es un misterio, hoy es el presente, que es un regalo para disfrutar hoy.
Mm-hmm.
Ayer ya pasó y mañana es un misterio.
Yeah, yesterday.
Hoy.
Right, yesterday passed and tomorrow is a mystery.
Today is a present.
Mm-hmm.
Is a present. Is a present
Mm-hmm.
gift today.
Right, right. And in English, right, we translate that very directly. The present is like a present.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to forget that because I think as humans we like to be time travelers. We like to jump to the future. and we'll miss the good about today.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's hard to find that, and I'm not denying that. So for those of you who are going through a tough time, you know, again, we hope that from our discussion, there's tools you can pull from, that you can find ways to find one thing, even one thing, that brings you joy, and hold on to that thing. I know today was a little heavier, but the world feels a little heavy right now.
That's the thing.
And so I think finding community with others in the midst of everything that's going on is really important, finding that good support. Hopefully you can pull things from our conversation today. But if you have tips or you have things that have helped you get through this, you know, put those in the comments, because I think it only helps other people who are struggling to figure out how to pull themselves out of everything that's going on. If you liked what we talked about, you know, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, because we have a lot more coming. And again, we want to build community around these universal themes that impact everybody. We're going to continue showing shorts from my aunt. She's still on her world adventure. And so we invite you, if you've seen some of those videos, to guess where she is in the world. We're leaving lots of little hints in those videos. But
completely. And think sometimes, yeah, we are in a hole that doesn't seem that you'll be able to get out of. But yeah, think and live. Life has also many joyful moments, and even if it sounds like an old phrase, but life is beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as we wrap up, I want to introduce my mom,
Anna.
I'm Joanna. My Aunt Laura is here in spirit. Will join us back in a couple of weeks. But for now, we want to remind you, whether it's good, bad, or funny,
Live it up.